Is K2-18B our first contact? That's coming up next, right here on the Parker J. Cole Show. Hi, and welcome to the Parker J. Cole Show. I'm your host, the Queen, Parker J. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we're going to be talking about what is making headlines all over the internet. Did we find evidence of life on another planet? Now, if you haven't heard the news, obviously you have been under a rock, but it has made shockwaves throughout the scientific community and throughout the enthusiasts who are always asking the question, are we alone? Did we find out that answer? And what does it mean for Christians when we discover and talk about things extraterrestrial, whether it's about UFOs, paranormal activity, extra dimensions, string theory? What does it all mean? Well, with me today is my good friend, Ben Avery. He is an author, a podcast host, editor, comic book designer, and more. And he's going to be sharing his thoughts with me about the big news on K2-18B. Ben, thank you so much for being here.
I am glad to be here, Parker. This is so cool to talk about. So, yeah.
As soon as I saw it, I needed to talk to someone who is much more well versed in some of the scientific underpinnings, things of this nature. And you are a sci-fi guy. You love speculative fiction. I've been on your podcast a few times, and it's great to have you on my podcast as well. And so there's so much you could talk about with this topic. But I gotta say, is this K2-18B our first contact? What do you think?
No.
Is that your scientific professional answer, Ben?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. First of all, the funny thing is, as I was looking into this, I looked at that. I had never in my head it was never K2-18B. It was always K2-18B for some reason. I don't know if that's that whole Star Wars C3PO kind of thing, but when you said K2-18B, I'm like, oh yeah, that would be 18B. It's
Look at what
easier
the
to say.
English language can do. But that sounds better, K2-18B. That does sound better than
I just
K2-18B. It just sounds better. It just does.
I don't know. I don't know. It's the kind of thing though I tell my kids when someone doesn't know how to pronounce a word, but they know what the word means, it's because they encountered it reading, not listening, and
Right,
so that's this
exactly.
that's what's happening here. So
Yeah.
yeah, so my scientific answer, and it comes from just kind of looking into what other people are saying. I mean, I'm not able to obviously look at the primary data. Um, but I just think it's a very premature to jump the gun and say this is life. This is life that we found. I do think that whatever it is that they found, there's some exciting ramifications behind it because whatever they found something completely new and different that no one's seen before or encountered before. As far as the what is it, the DMS and the DMDS, the di dimethyl sulfide
Dimethyl sulfide and
and dimethyl
dimethyl
sulfide. So
disulfide. Yes.
yeah,
And I want to talk about that real quick when you finish your thought. I want to talk about that real quick.
well, I mean that's the main thing is just that there's no way to be able to tell just from this that that's the only possible answer is life. Now, that's the only place these two things come from here on Earth. So DMS and DMDS, from what everyone's saying, is that it only comes from life on Earth. That's the only source of these chemicals here is because of life. But that doesn't mean that we can automatically jump to life on this other world when it's really difficult to even tell anything else about what they don't even know what it's made of, really. Like, it could be an ocean world. It probably is an ocean world. It might be an ocean world. It also might not be. It might be a gas giant. Like, that's what another scientist, I was reading an article. I can't give you my works cited page, so to speak, but where they were like, this kind of thing could just be a gas giant that we've never encountered before, and so I just feel like, there's a lot more that has to go into this before any kind of definitive answer can be made. And um yeah, so that's where my no comes from. And it's kind of a disappointing no, but at the same time, it's a big universe. So it doesn't mean that there's no life out there anywhere. It just means that right there. Maybe, maybe not. So,
What was fascinating is that they believe this planet may be a water world.
right.
And that has wonderful implications just from a biblical standpoint. Because when we look at the creation story in the book of Genesis, and it says, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, right? And I was thinking it would make sense if life has a cycle. And if life is the same, I don't believe God would do everything differently from one planet to the next. I think he'll be very consistent in the way he designs things with variation. But if life were to come, it would come from the waters, right? And so when they were talking about this, the information they received is literally blips of information in the vast sea of information. So when they were looking at this DMS, which is dimethyl sulfide, it's a compound with a chemical formula, and it is usually found in plant life on the ocean, like you were saying. So that's why they were thinking we found possible signs of DMS on this planet. But it wasn't portrayed that way. When you saw the headlines, and I hate clickbait, when you saw that they said life found alien I found on a different planet. That's what these headlines said. And so, of course, most of us who are very eager to know whether or not we're alone in the universe, we're clicking that button. And I hate the way that does that because it seems as if corporate media, and I don't want to put the stamp on every media outlet out there, but corporate media tends to just want to engage the audience instead of inform the audience properly with correct information. And in this regard, we need to know possible signs of life on another planet may have been found. That will at least
Exactly.
give us, okay, we have some expectations. What did you guys see? But they actually said alien life found on another planet.
Hmm.
And dear viewer, if you want to go and look it up yourself, you will find titles like that. But thankfully, there are scientists who are very rigorous in their understanding. They're like, you can't make these type of decisions. So I want to kind of go into the process here and get some of your thoughts. When this group of scientists were looking into this back in 2020 or 2023, the dates are a little vague. They actually used a James Webb telescope
Hmm.
to find out this information. However, when they used the James Webb telescope, they actually used it to the max of its capabilities. And this is significant because when you're pushing an instrument to its most optimum level, you may get the errors in your data.
Right.
And they may have, and one scientist who was looking at the data said, well, you push the instrument to its furthest capacity. That's like having me run more than a mile. I mean, I can run it, that I'm going to run it well. I'm sick. So, what do you think about that when you hear that? Is it just that these scientists were excited just to see, oh, maybe there's DMS, this must be a water world where there's algae? What do you think is the motivation behind prematurely making these type of claims and then letting that out to the public to know?
So I think that the really egregious claims are coming from your clickbait. That's where you're getting the absolute statement, life on other worlds has been found. We found alien life discovered. Those things are coming from those people. The scientists themselves, I think that they are very, very confident in their findings. What I was reading was there's like these stages of confidence that scientists have, and they're at stage 3. I can't remember the exact phrase, but stage 3 is like a 99.7% certainty. But really, you're supposed to be at stage 5 before you can really make the claim, and not at stage 5 is 99.999% kind of a thing. And so, um, I think that the people who made the discovery, I think they're very excited. I think they are very, very confident in what they've found. I do wonder how much of what they found is self-fulfilling. Like not that they looked at the data and said, "Oh, this could be this or this or this, and we're going to choose the one that we like." But they looked at the data that they found and chose um, the final conclusion that they wanted. Because I one of the things as I was looking at it is like this could just be we found a new way that DMS is made, And that in and of itself is quite a discovery as well. Like it might be that this is a natural process on that planet. We're not there. We can't see it. We don't know. And so the people who are making the claims on the YouTube videos where they're saying we found life, and on the articles where they're saying we found life, I would blame them for what you're talking about with like almost deliberate misinformation. The scientists, I would, if I'm going to fault them with anything, it's with enthusiasm for their findings, and because they also before a few years ago, I think it was 2023, that they discovered methane and carbon dioxide. They as they were analyzing the data. What's fascinating to me about all of this is just how they get that data. They get it by looking at the planet as it passes in front of the sun, and they look at the spectrum of light that comes through where that planet is, and that's how they are able to make these discernments about what chemicals are on this planet. I think it's fascinating, and honestly, I read that and I see that, and I've always been curious, like, how does that really work? It's just because it seems like magic. It's like, okay, so it's so far away. I mean, this is 40 light years away. Like that's far. I mean, it's almost inconceivable how far it is when you're really thinking about like you're talking about running a mile is difficult, and it is, but 40 light years. And so that's why, I I don't feel like they're being intentionally disingenuous on the scientist side. I just feel like some of I feel like they're being very enthusiastic and excited, and they're playing up. This could mean this, but they're definitely planting a flag on this could mean this, and they're not saying it only means this. They are definitely saying it could mean, but yeah, that's kind of where I fall on them. Um, it's fascinating, whatever it is, though. Like just the fact that they can do it is fascinating.
Well, think about what you said about how they look at the light, and from the light, they measure the various compounds within the light signature to be able to tell what the compounds are of the atmosphere of that planet. And it just shows the wonder of God
Oh
that
yeah.
He gave us the ability to look at light, just light, in a very narrow spectrum and discover things about the universe far, far away. And I, as a woman of faith, it's very difficult for me to say, you know what, that's just randomly happened. That was just, something that just kind of dug up. The fact that you can find the same compounds on different planets too, that you can recognize compounds on this planet
Mhm.
that replicate on other planets. Now, what other planets also have maybe some exotic particles, exotic compounds we don't know, of course, because we don't know that we're not there.
Right.
And a lot of the information is basically gathered from looking at data. NOAA has a camera that's taking pictures of the planet. They're literally looking at dots on a screen. We see these very beautiful artistic impressions of what we think the planet looks like, forgetting that they are artistic impressions of what we think it looks like. I was looking at one planet recently that was discovered, and they believe that it rains liquid metal because the planet is so hot. There is another planet they saw where it has super jet streams in the atmosphere, and the jet streams go one way this way, one way that way. So the atmosphere would be extremely volatile. The weather be extremely volatile. You probably get ripped to shreds if you're to land just in the atmosphere because of the jet streams. All this is done by looking at data. No one
Mhm.
has a camera. Even the pictures of the Milky Way. They'll show like a wide picture of the Milky Way. Well, we don't see the Milky Way like that. We only see maybe half arm of the Milky Way. And that's on a good day with really good instruments that show us half an arm. Because it replicates itself, we can get an idea of what the picture of the Milky Way looks like. So all this data is us extrapolating what we know and then making hypotheses about it. So
Yes.
I understand what you mean about scientists being enthusiastic, but it's the people who just want you to clickbait that make me upset. Because as
Yeah.
soon as I saw this, oh my gosh, I was clicking that button like, oh my gosh, it found life. And so I'm expecting to see like maybe Vulcan empire tears or something, or Klingon warship or something like that. No, them, and then they said it may be algae. He
Yeah.
just said maybe
Yeah.
algae, and that's
Yeah.
a huge, huge. Um, what's the word I want to use? A huge leap of evidence to say that there's algae on that planet. But what were you going to say, Ben?
Well, I was say microorganisms is what I was reading. They called a lot of times they were just referring to microorganisms, but when they were talking about that, that's the thing where if it is true, it's not just algae. It is an enormous amount of algae because the amount of the DMS that they are registering is, I think it's like 10 times beyond Earth or something like that. Like it's far beyond how much Earth produces. And so if it is life that's creating that stuff, that means that they just, if it is an ocean planet, it's just teeming with life, but it'd be basically teeming with microorganism life. And so it's, I mean, these are not people who are going to come and visit us. This is not, we don't have to worry about Independence Day or First Contact or anything like that. If we go there, we're going to be sitting on really high tech boats, just looking at things through a microscope. But it's, again, whatever it is, it's fascinating. However it is, because if it's being created somehow in a way that does not match what we know here on Earth, that just changes our perspective on a very tiny bit of chemistry, but it still is. How many new discoveries do we get these days? A lot of the new figuring out how things work, how electricity works, how gravity works. These are things that um, the level of knowledge that we've gotten to is, it's almost critical mass as far as we may not be able to get much more, you know, like without, you know, some sort of massive discovery or something like that. So it's just, this is something new, and that's fascinating too. So.
It's almost an information debt of the information because with the James Webb telescope, we started to discover new things that we didn't know. They took a snapshot of the galaxies, and some people were having an existential crisis when they saw the snapshot of the galaxy. Me, on the other hand, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is man that thou art mindful of him, Lord?" And I was thinking how David looked at the moon, and he didn't even have the tech we have now, and he looked at the moon like, look at the moon, look at the stars. How could you care about us? And they would have seen stars and planets back then. They may not have been able to name, but they would have understood it. And so I was thinking when I saw that snapshot, and I said, out of all the galaxies and the possible planets, all the things we're learning, you know my name. And that was incredible to be humbled by the gravity of what it means to have a relationship with God. That the God of the universe, the God who created these wonderful things, and He didn't put us in a fishbowl, He put us in a vast plain, if you will, with wonders to behold, new things to discover, to continually probe the depths of His creativity evermore. And when I saw that, I was just like, wow. And who knows how long, depending on your view of end times or whatever, who knows how long we're going to be here, right? Who knows how long we're going to stay here, right? But if he gives us the ability to keep probing the depths of the universe, what more discoveries will we find out?
Well, so one of the things I used to do, I'm a children's pastor, and I made a presentation once that it's the kind of thing where it almost feels like it's heading one direction, but then it kind of, I try and make a left turn with it, where it's just pictures of, okay, here is the Earth and the moon, and then it shows the Earth and the moon in scale next to Jupiter, and just how tiny it is, and then it shows it's Earth, Jupiter, the sun, and just showing how big things are getting. It gets to some of the biggest stars that we have been able to discover, and um, on the screen that I'm doing this on, it's like Earth becomes 1 pixel. It's just like it's there on my presentation, but you can barely see it, and then you actually hit a point where you can't see it at all. And just talking about how, okay, so that makes you maybe feel very, very tiny, very, very small. However, the thing that you have to keep in mind is the God who created this, if he is powerful enough and wise enough to create as much as he did, that means he would have mental bandwidth, for lack of a better term, to be able to give individual attention and to care about an individual. Like, he is exponentially powerful. And then it's like, why would he care about someone as small as me? Why would he care about, there's however many billion people in the world and he cares about me? Come on, like, that's a little hard to swallow. But but to just recognize that if he did create the universe, and if he did create all these people, and that whole thing, his eye is on the sparrow, so I know he's watching me, kind of a thing. The truth of it is, he's so powerful that he can hear the prayer of a 4-year-old child who's worried about his goldfish, and he can hear the prayer of a 50-year-old man who is, concerned about, his child. Like, he cares. He does. And he has, mental bandwidth is a really, really dumb phrase to use here, but it really fits as far as just considering how big, powerful, the whole omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, like, if we are going to use those words to describe him, then we need to trust as well what we're saying, that he is big and he does care. He loves you. And he has the ability to focus in and to know you and know the hairs on your head. So, and for some people, it's easier, I guess, to count the hairs on the head. But um, for for him, it's just business as usual. He loves his creation. He loves his people. And then there's when you're starting to talk about what we're talking about here, there are some theological implications about life on other worlds, but the theological implication to be concerned about mostly is he cares about you and he wants you to care about the other people he cares about. He wants you to care about your neighbor and the people around you and the world around you. So
And if it's our galactic neighbor or our interstellar neighbor, all the better. I remember I never saw Interstellar. I heard it was good, never really saw it. Or if I did see, I can't really remember it. But I recently came upon a clip and they were on I guess, an ocean world. And she's looking out at the horizon. She goes, look at the horizon. All of a sudden she goes, those aren't clouds, those are waves. And they had to hurry up and get back in the ship. And just the concept of that blew me away. That was a great concept to think the waves were so high they look like clouds rushing at you. And you're going, oh my goodness, you have
yeah.
better get going. So, and great, it was a great scene, great effects, everything else. But I got to thinking, imagine being on the water world. There's another short story, not short story, there's a book about a sentient ocean written by a Polish guy. I think it was a Polish guy or a Russian guy.
Yeah, Solaris.
Yes, Solaris. He was a sentient ocean. And what he wanted to do is that particular author had a philosophy where people just weren't important, that we don't really know what alien life is, that alien life and alien communication is absolutely impossible because alien life would be too distinct for us to even get to know each other, right? That was one of his philosophies. In a lot of his stories and books, he explored this concept that alien communication will be absolutely impossible. I'm here to tell you, I don't think so. I don't think so. Some of the implications of the theological implications is what you just said. Who is my neighbor? And if my neighbor is not just of this world, but of another world, of another galaxy, what if I were to take neighborliness to them? What would that look like? And so we go from having more of an earth chauvinistic view to more of a galactic view of who is my neighbor. And I don't think God would create us so distinct from each other that we could not be neighbors and could not be brothers and sisters in Christ. Because every Christian knows if we found life on another world, Vulcans, Klingons, what have you, we'd be like, have you heard of Jesus? Would you like to know who my Savior is? So we would definitely do that. And I think, I think that has very positive theological implications. Now, there are some people who said, no, aliens don't exist. God made us as the apple of his eye. There's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing wrong with that either. I'm open to both, to be honest with you. I'm open to both. What about you, Ben? What do you think?
Well, I think that I don't know how much of a pessimistic view this is, but I don't think we're going to know for sure in our lifetime. I don't think that. I think because, I mean, like I said, this planet's 40 light years away. We're not visiting that planet anytime soon.
Oh,
They're not visiting us anytime soon. And honestly, if it is a water world and it is just life underwater, the only way that that life is going to be sentient is if God does dip his finger in and choose specifically to create a life that has that's the spark of humanity, the spark of a soul or whatever. Um, I don't think that it's just bodies aren't going to like and as far as like visiting other worlds, life form that has to live in liquid, they're not going to leave their planet because just the liftoff of getting off world with the chemicals needed to survive, the liquid chemicals needed to survive, like they're lifting up not just a ship with air and people, but a ship with water or whatever. And so, I don't think we're ever going to know for sure. I think that things like this, there will be room for doubt, there'll be room for interpretation, and it will, yeah. But the bigger question about like, did God create the universe just for us? Well, I can understand when people are taking that as a biblical stance because of verses like Christ died once and for all, and um, if he died once and for all, it makes sense that he'd die once and for all here on earth because we can still spread the news of that and we can talk to people about that. But if he did that once and for all, and it includes um, this planet that's 40 light years away that we're never going to visit, and so how are they even going to know about Christ? Well, I mean, there's all sorts of imaginative things you can do with that, but I, I I can understand why someone would say this is what that means. I can understand why if the Bible doesn't mention life on other worlds, then I don't believe in life on other worlds because the Bible, I would take the viewpoint that the Bible doesn't mention it because we don't need to know it. It's not important for us in our relationship with God to know every single detail of the entire universe. And I think it's very, very possible that the universe is such a large place that it would make sense. Why wouldn't God create neighbors? And maybe that is the kind of thing that when we are standing at the crystal throne or bowing at the crystal throne, and that we might be joined by others who never set foot on our world, because they are also worshiping the God who created the universe. And so I think it's quite possible. I understand, when people talk about, well, aliens are just demons. Well, I can understand why you'd say that. And I also truly, truly believe that unless someone is led here specifically, they ain't gonna find us. Like this is it's not just a needle in a haystack, it is a molecule in a haystack when you're looking for like and just the distances and all that kind of thing.
not to mention the natural barriers of space like radiation, distance,
Right.
time. We've recently discovered there may be like interstellar portals between like the sun and earth, and I saw a article that had theorized, and I'm going by memory here, so forgive me, dear viewer, if I don't have it all together, but that our galaxy, I believe, is moving. I believe that it's moving, and it's moving so slow we can't obviously tell. We're on Earth, we can't see the galaxy moving, and that there was like it's moving in like a bubble, something like that. And that was fascinating just to hear. But again, these are high physics, high science type of concepts that are just really just theories because again, you can't prove any of this.
Right.
I remember they were showing structures, some of the largest structures in a universe, and these structures are not fully formed. They're like the great arcs, some are almost circles. And that gives me to wonder, are these structures multidimensional, where we can only see parts of these structures, not all of these structures? So it starts to get really trippy if you start to delve into some of this stuff, which I like. I mean, I live in trippy half the time anyway, so that stuff fascinates me. But dear viewer, what do you think? Do you think that our theological basis for being unique in the universe will be strengthened or weakened by having galactic or interstellar neighbors? Will we ever get to these planets ever? Are we meant to find out? Were these natural barriers in the space, like radiation, distance, time, and the limited technology, are we ever going to get past that? In our sci-fi, we do. In our sci-fi, we
Yeah.
go to the edge of the universe, and at the edge of the universe, we find out there are the Baptists there all along. We're saying, hey, this So we have this vivid imagination, this curiosity that's constantly insatiable, that's always wanting more. And I think the Lord gave us enough of curiosity to keep probing, keep digging, keep finding, keep trying, keep building, keep expanding, keep growing. I think these things are there for our own human development because if He truly wanted us in a fishbowl, that would have been easy to do. We would never know the difference. So, Ben, I want to thank you so much for being with me on the show today to talk about this. I knew that you would have some wonderful insights into the topic. I want people to know about your podcast and your books that you got coming out. And then we're going to talk about a quick project that Ben and I collaborated on.
Yeah. My final word would be a lot of people are asking the question, are we alone? And the answer is it may not be aliens, but we're not alone. Like
Amen. Amen.
we are not alone in this universe, and you are not alone in this universe, and you are not alone in your situations. Like God is there. He loves you. He cares so much. So that would be my kind of final word to that. As far as where can people find me, benavery.com is my website, but then also strangersandaliens.com. That is my podcast where we talk about geeky stuff and Christian geeky stuff. So that's kind of the place to go. It's been a little bit of hiatus recently. I'm trying to get things back and running because I just don't have the same co-host co-host support that I used to have. And so it's kind of doing it on my own. And so there's also other projects that I'm working on that are also taking my time. And so it's kind of like balancing which one am I doing, which one do I apply most of my effort, time, and mental bandwidth to. So yeah. But
Perfect word for you. And so Ben and I collaborated on a project called A Time for Everything. It was an anthology with 28 stories, 29 authors, and we used the poem in Ecclesiastes, a time for everything, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to gather stones, a time to throw away stones. That verse, that couplet poem, which is famous throughout all of human history, that talks about various stages of life. And then reached out to all of us authors and said, hey, do you guys want to write a speculative fiction story that has a time manipulation element about one of these verses? And that's how we collaborated. So we created an anthology called A Time for Everything. Guess what? Yours truly has the first story called A Time to Be Born. And it is a time alternate history sci-fi romantic short story that kicks off the whole series, the whole anthology. And let me tell you, this was such a great work, gang. I gotta tell you, we had so much fun. We were very excited. Ben got us all going. But you have to remember, herding writers is like herding cats. It ain't gonna happen. And so the fact that he did so well with all of our various personalities just speaks a lot to his leadership and his ability to get us all together. It could have something you do being a children's pastor too.
there are definitely some similarities in how I dealt with certain parts of both of those things. So yeah.
And I appreciate the fact that you were able to have me as part of that project. So, yeah, so you want to get a copy of it, is available online wherever books are sold, and then Ben has some other books he has coming out. Tell our viewers about that.
Well, so we have another anthology that we're working on called Parabolic Orbits, which is parables of Jesus set in science fiction and fantasy settings. But I also have a book coming out. I'm not sure how soon. It'll be within the next month or so. It's called Timepieces, a triptych in time, and or triptych through time. It's three stories that are unrelated, other than the time travel device looks very similar. It's all three of them are using basically a pocket watch design, um, kind of harkening back to that old show Voyagers from when I was a kid. That was very instrumental in my imaginative development. And so it's three stories, though they all take a different angle on how time travel works. So in one, you cannot change the past. In one, you can, and the repercussions are big. And in one, time is it's resilient. And so just kind of exploring those three different angles of things. And the other thing I found is in each of those stories, there's certain things that happen that I did not intend. Like I mentioned Star Trek in all three of them. Well, that's understandable. But in all three of them, and I'm just gonna throw this out there, in all three of them, they all get shot by their own weapon, one way or another. And I was like, when I realized that happened, I was like, hey, that's kind of a cool little thing that kind of unites them together a little bit even more into that triptych. So yeah. So I'll let you know when that comes out though.
And I had the pleasure of reading one of those stories in draft, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Loved the concept, and I can't wait to get the whole copy there too. And so I am actually part of the Parabolic Orbits anthology. The problem is that I have been busy, and so Ben is smiling, but I know he's like, "I need your stuff, and I need it soon." So Ben, you're going to get it. I know you're going to get it.
Okay. However, just also understand I haven't finished my own.
Oh,
So
okay, so we're good.
yeah, and that's I actually did push the publication date. I mean, I haven't told anyone up a specific publication date, but
Okay,
in my mind, I've pushed the publication date off into more towards November,
okay, good.
just to give us time to get these stories done. And it's the editing that's killing
Yeah.
me. And just finding time to be able to go through. And it's interesting because every writer is different. And so some of the writers, one writer I know, there was like 16 small punctuation edits, and that was it in the whole thing. And there's other writers who I'm not sure, I, I, there's a lot more.
It's different. This different. This more edits, And I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
for me, I know when I send my story in, I'm actually writing kind of like a sci-fi horror story in first present tense, which is not a tense I write in.
Mm.
And I'm sitting here going, I don't know how this is going to work. And so Ben's going to have to guide me through that. And he really helped me with the first story. So it was great. So, dear listener and dear viewer, you are going to be getting some great books out there. And I love Ben's ideas because he gets these ideas for anthologies together because he loves anthologies. He talks about that in the
Yeah.
first anthology, A Time for Everything. And it gives you an opportunity to bring unique stories and unique voices together.
Right.
And so the anthology never has the same voice. And different writers bring different strengths to the anthology. And you get something for everyone in an anthology. Some people like the more uh punchier stories, some people like the more languid stories. Doesn't matter. There's something for everybody in this anthology. So make sure you go ahead and get your copy today.
Yeah. Some people like Superman, some people like Batman, some people like Aquaman, some people like Green Lantern, some people like Wonder Woman. But when you have the Justice League,
Yeah.
you get all of those all together,
Get
and
the whole team.
that's the
Whole
strength.
team.
That's the
Yeah.
strength of an anthology.
Yeah. And so, Ben, thank you once again for being with me on the show today. Really enjoyed having you, and I cannot wait to have you back and have you back soon.
Yeah, yeah. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Parker.
And we were talking to Ben Avery. And if you want to know more about him, just look in the show description box below. All of his information is there. I love Ben. He is such a great guy, great brother in Christ. And as we gotten to know each other over the course of the last couple of years, we just really enjoyed our growing friendship and our understanding, speculative fiction, all the good things. And I know you will too. So make sure you go ahead, visit his website, his podcast, and be sure to support my brother by buying his books. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this edition of the Parker J. Cole Show. You have a wonderful, absolutely glorious, blessed day, and God bless.